situational reporting, resource messaging, and the distribution element for doing exactly that, identifying it's an epidemiology study actually that they want to do, and it's a research project that they're trying to get funding for even now. So yes, it's definitely applicable. It's nice little simple data standards, but look what it enables, you know? And let's stop these stovepipes. Let's raise the bar of communication for everyone, and everyone wins, right?
I agree.
No, I think more fun moms get his head down the stairs.
Ah, but come on. Leslie has a little higher up, right? Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you for your time.
I am technologically challenged here, sir. Okay, is there another?
This is all you give me.
There's another.
Oh, on this, there should be another one?
I see. Maybe on the stick. Do you have the stick?
Oh, you can stick that.
Put all this in there. Here you go. Mine said she'd say final, but I thought it was all in one. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, how many people know metadata here? Can raise their hand, know what metadata is? Well, you're talking to the guy that did the human metadata projects as part of the Human Interoperability Enterprise Committee at the Pentagon. So think about this. Think of the metadata from unmanned systems. You have the message layer, you have the video layer, you have the sensor layer. And so what we're trying to do here is post before. That's it. Yes. I don't want to bring it up. Okay. Okay.
Gotcha.
So my agenda here is I'm going to talk a little bit about the stories first, but remember when JC said all crises are local? Well, guess what also is local? A lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurialism. Now that you have 3D printing, you can really do, I'm amazed at how many small businesses and entrepreneurs are in this region. And with 3D printing, you can start doing what I call bottom up, not just top down. And I really recognize JC because when we talk about Mississippi State, Riverwatch, all these things you do, a lot of small businesses, we're trying to give you the ability to, when you take the data in, whether it's message, video, sensor, whatever that data is, it is normalized before it's stored and it's redirected out. Now, there was an architecture the Air Force did called Service-Oriented Horizontal Information Exchange, SOIC. And it basically was the enterprise architecture with an XML schema that goes right into what Captain does, and it allows you to have the architecture to scale. Because when you start doing UAVs, what if I want a UAV, I want a UGV, I want a USB? People are starting to want to do these MUM-T things. And man, so, you know, it's really growing. So the question is, can you scale to bring in more and more sensors and more data? And if you can't scale, I remember when the National Guard bought the ATM network, and I'm old, 1995. And they went, because they picked the ATM network, the National Guard today can't use video over their guard net. It was the wrong architecture. So the reason why I'm so excited to be here, I'll tell you a little story about Dahlgren and Fort Pickett. I went to Dahlgren in 2006, and they did a Buster UAS, and they put, NRO gave 4 Busters to Dahlgren, and somebody there at the Coalition Warrior wrote a 75-page report about every little element of the Buster. And he published that report 2 weeks after CWIT. And the UK wrote a $10 million check. And I call that Joint Rapid Acquisition Leveraging the Experimental Frame. I went to OSD. I said, man, give me some more money. I want to create this huge environment. Fort Pickett will draw all this Joint Rapid Acquisition capability. And it was promised, but then it didn't go to the Navy, and the Navy got upset with JSOC. I don't want to go into that one, but anyway, the ambition is I started realizing that if you put the right capabilities into environments, the customers will come, the civilian, the commercial, because you can do things that they're looking for. And that little company, Buster, grew like crazy. At Fort Pickett, I went down there and I was with Jay Wilmot and a little company called UAV Pro. And I saw 4 little small companies, NOAA, NASA, Ag, and Forestry. And I went to the CEO of UAV Pro and said, oh my gosh, why are they all here? 1 week? They go, well, it's $3,000 to $6,000 a week. I said, what? $3,000 to $6,000 a week? I have to pay $40,000 a day to go to a military base. So you've got a huge thing here, y'all. You should market it. Well, I was hired to do promotion, marketing, Industry Public Officials Day. I had no idea that Fort Pitt was in a competition with 9 states to be the Foreign Affairs National Security Training Center for State Department. We won. So right now, in addition to UAV Pro, there's AAI, L3, DARPA, CSC, Lockheed Martin, all came in. 10,000 jobs are going to be in that environment in the next 2 years. Rural little area. And what happened is I had just told people what was coming. I won a grant, and then the State Department bought up the land. They were so impressed I couldn't do my grant. It didn't matter. It was already done. So that Fort Pickett thing, it was a huge success story for Virginia. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit about this canopy buoy, relentless thinking. It came out of Colombia when the FARC rebels blew up the Ecopetrol pipeline 2 years ago. And President Santos said, dang darn it, I spent hundreds of millions of dollars, I won't mention the contractors, and they didn't solve my problem. So they went and found this buoy, spent a year and a half with a small company modifying this buoy, and went out to Paycom and did some amazing things. I'm going to talk a little about CollaboraSpace. This is a very unique technology that allows people to stay on their screen and hand off the data to people. You could be at the Arctic and you hand off data to people and subject matter experts around the world to look at the same data. Again, I talked about SOIC. If you want to see more about SOIC, we're at the exhibit table. I'm going to talk a little bit about the STEM and environmental sciences that I'm getting pulled into that deals into what they're doing in Hawaii and all that stuff. And I'm just to summarize. So here's the buoy. There's actually 2 buoys. There's the real large one that can do 300 to 600 pounds, and that's the one that went out to Paycom. The Army TARDEC funded it, and as Lisa said, it lost all power, and it did ground, air, relay, a lot of comms. We're trying to bring it up here. We'd love to have it here somewhere, work with people. And the good thing is it can process data. So what Honeycomb Networks does can be put on the buoy, which again allows more relay alerts to go, and each buoy can go about 50 miles. Wow. And you start sending relays and different things. You all of a sudden go and do things in the remote areas you never could do before. And that opens up all kinds of research, environmental monitoring, education training, so it opens up. That little small one is called we call it the Eco Buoy. It's gonna be the standard for the state of Georgia's water monitoring. But you can take the big one and the little one. You can probably come up with all kinds of ideas how to relate the big one to the little one. And I want to recognize when we met Elisa Jones, I didn't know Christopher Weller knew a lot about HARP. I thought he was she gave up at Corn, and he was really, really happy to see that, because he had been with HARP since the beginning. And he didn't know that University of Alaska now has HARP, and he was very happy about that. So again, that's how they launch it right now. They have a big buoy. What we're looking for, and what I have met by being here, very valuable to be here, is I found new ways to launch that buoy by itself with propellers, or by ways to either drop it out of the C-30 or launch it from a boat, which I had to talk to Mr. Parker about heavier weights to carry, but he has got an amazing capability. So again, what does the Canopy Buoy Relay Network do? Again, you ever heard the Prepositioned Expeditionary Assistance Kit? It's a $17 million program within the Marine Corps that was started. So we were always looking to put these kits in disaster zones, and this is the best peak system I've ever seen. And it allows you to, again, what I see it doing from a standpoint of the Arctic is it broadens your ability to provide a land, air, and sea services in these remote areas, and get into not just RDT&E and OT&E, but get into MUM-T, and go into what Dr. Cahill and I were going to talk about, Naval Surface Warfare Center. They're the only people that have an unmanned systems integration workshop, and we're all in the human and machine team type of testing. How many people here have held a Golden Phoenix? Okay. JC's heard about it. You're go JC knows. So Golden Phoenix was set up as the first live exercise with multiple unmanned platforms on San Diego State, Arizona, and it was live. In fact, it was so live the people in California thought there was something really happening because they went into the LA Coliseum and they thought it was a real disaster. And so we had to work with them on our committee at the Pentagon and say, look, you need to tell people, you're gonna run a live exercise with unmanned systems and manned systems, you need to tell them. But the good news about Golden Phoenix is from a training perspective, we saw these organizational disconnects between one organizational group and another organizational group in jointly responding to exercises. So you have this Arctic Council here, you have 8 countries. I know when there's a disaster up here, it's gonna require a lot of different people to get involved. And so there you've got you can run, and you know what happened in Golden Phoenix? How do you think they paid for Golden Phoenix? Guess who paid? They had no money at San Diego State. They just asked for everybody's training budgets, and they all gave their training money. So overnight, it paid for itself for 4 years. Because all the university did was take the money in and provide donuts and lunch, and everybody else was happy, because they had the environment to train in. The other thing is the sustainable smart community. So what I'm involved in is the Loudoun County Gramercy Project, and there's a lot of interest in smart, sustainable communities and robotics. How can we take all this environmental monitoring and environmental sciences and integrate robotics to it? So lately I was invited to Hyderabad, India at their UAS Innovation Center to come in and talk about environmental sciences and robotics, which I would have loved to say, hey, come to DC, see the sustainable art, and let's go out and see some environments where you can actually experience the art of the possible. Generate request for unmet. So this logistics and supply thing is, and the TEF standard, while it's not there yet, I see all these companies now delivering things with UAVs, medical supplies, there's, I think the X-Prize Foundation did some stuff. So I know there's all these companies now trying to do logistics and supply with UAVs. And just think, you have a UAV, a UGV, and you can have all these handoffs now to deliver resources, people. And with this high-speed stuff, I gotta believe Amazon would want to come up here. I mean, they're in Canada, they're in the UK, why aren't they in the Arctic? I'll have to call my VP Global and say, Teresa, what is wrong with the Arctic? I mean, if you're a US company, man, come to the Arctic.
It's the airspace.
Huh?
Airspace.
Airspace. So, also, again, this land, air, and sea, I'm glad I met the Hawaii guys doing high-speed racing. I'm actually working on high-speed racing in Chesapeake Bay right now. So I think we're gonna get together with Hawaii on high-speed stuff, because that's huge. It gets kids involved, and they're your future. So here's the picture of the relay. So as Elisa said, we use multiple canopy buoy relays, and it always relay itself. So all tactical command and control video data services from ground, air, and sea. That's huge. That's a huge thing to have added to your test range or added to a forward deployed site. And it's very good. And the Army, I can make an announcement, Christopher called me. The Army is coming to Alaska, and they've got money, but it's not till 2018. And the question is, can we do things before 2018 to really make it bigger than what they're envisioning? This is just a scenario with, you have one on the mountain, you have a maritime distress, and you can have a relay inside. So again, this is just one other scenario. This is a missing boater. Now, you see all these little things on the ground, and anybody here ever heard of PROSAS, the Passive Remote Open Situational Awareness System? Has anybody heard of that? That was a thing funded by OSD, ATL, JSOC several years ago to basically say, we want to have sensors and then trigger this and trigger that and trigger this, tipping and queuing, so we can do unmanned systems intelligently. And so this is like a process model where you have it on early warning. And again, what we're trying to do in a nutshell here is we want to move from this long reaction period to a early warning preemption capability. And especially in distances like the Arctic, in places like the islands in Hawaii, you have this long distance. The earlier you can get the data of early warning, the quicker you can respond and save lives and things like that. There's its scenario of putting in a tree, the little buoy, and this is where we have to find people to put in the tree. But I heard your trees in Alaska are pretty thin. I don't know if you could sit in the trees in Alaska, but that's a jungle tree model with the same kind of, and again, we get to that beyond light, voice line of sight and things like that. And again, it covers all waveforms. How many people have heard of TV white space super Wi-Fi? Anybody? Well, Congress recognized Virginia, North Carolina, and one other state for putting TV white space super Wi-Fi into guard bases and other and military bases. Reason being is if you put TV white space super Wi-Fi on a ground station, you can go 80 miles non-line of sight, beyond line of sight, voice, video, and data. The only reason we don't have it in this country is because, unlike the other countries, our telcos have not separated their data from their networks. And so they see competition with TV white space and cellular. The rest of the countries don't. So if you go to Canada, they all know about white space. You go to Africa, you go to other countries, they all know about white space. It's an amazing UHF, VHF frequency. This is a missing hiker, same kind of scenario. And then we got HARP up here, and we're very interested in talking about how can we use HARP. Can HARP apply in environmental science and other kinds of ways? How can we use HARP? Because we think with the Arctic Council and other places, HARP could have an amazing environmental sciences role. So this is basically in summary. It supports tactical communications for deployed teams. It's a command and control node. I think you can put other data processors. You can put a hyperspectral processor on there. There's a company in Corning, not a big company. Corning just bought a little company in Hawaii. They could come up here and want to test out their hyperspectral thing and have it process in the buoy. Automatic, it's got AI in it, so it manages the software. It can last for 5 years with the batteries in the big one, and you don't have to touch it. So it's a huge, it's a forward deployed relay node that you can do a lot of things with. I just put this up there, the UGV, USB with tethered aerostat combination. I worked on some research on this because we were trying to find affordable tethered aerostats are very inexpensive. What if we put some combinations with Coast Guard boats, or we could use a tether in some other kind of thing? So that's just not a scenario, because you know why? When Sulu Mindanao had a flood and all the logs came down the mountain, I had been working with Sulu Mindanao with a friend for a long time. It wiped out a lot of the work that was done there that removed Abu Sayyaf as a terrorist group. And what happened was, had we just had simple aerostats tied to vehicles, we could have saved hundreds of thousands of lives. The aerostat would have gone off, we'd have had situational awareness. They had no hybrid capability. I know there are people up here who could build hybrids to the cows come home for vehicles. Okay, so that's just a little picture. This is what we need to work on with the people up here who know how to do hybrid deployment concepts. This is what, because right now we deploy, but there's all kinds of research in that area, and I'm sure the DoD would probably be very interested in figuring out ways to evolve those deployment concepts. Collabor Suite, okay, this is Collabor Space. I'll be very quick. Every collaborative technology that the government uses right now, including Joint Intelligence Enterprise and everything else, requires the human to get out of what they're doing to go to their other application. I was at a wedding, I talked to this collaborative engineer, and I said, wow, who do you work for? He said, it's Collabor Space. And I said, well, I've never heard of you. I track this like a hawk. And he says, well, we don't advertise or market. I said, excuse me, are you commercial? Yes. Can you export? Yes. Why don't you advertise? Well, we're the back office of the intel community. You get all the intel guys to collaborate? That's a huge challenge. So I went with the president, and Collabor Space does some amazing things, and it basically is this. You're on your screen, you're looking at something, and you see situational awareness, and you can't figure out what that is. Can you dynamically, out without leaving your screen, hand off the data, or hand off control of the unmanned system? So this is a handoff collaborative thing that's huge for the Navy and all those people who want to learn how to hand off data, hand off control in real time. So it's just fully integrated. You see the D6, Situational Awareness Program Management Project Team. And so how many people know that it's a difference between coordination, cooperation, collaboration? Those are all things, but you have to implement and integrate all the other C's to the ultimate C, which is collaboration. And so you can take a social media architecture and integrate it into collaboration. And it's secure. That's another reason we like Collabor Suite. It's very secure. And we can attach a web part onto what Honeycomb Networks does and expand that alert out from not just a data alert, but actually a situational awareness alert, or where you're really collaborating with more just the alert than the alert data. That's what we built with a company that I grew called KSI Video. It's called a Common Operations Picture. So back when Elisa and I have been together a long time, we were working on Captain Cop in 2007 in Dahlgren, and unfortunately we just didn't come together at that time. But now I think the time is right to take the Common Alert Protocol, the Common Operations Picture, the logistics, and the cyber standards, and start working on these and bringing these together. Because at the end of the day, you have to share data with critical people, not the world. The world doesn't need the data, but the key subject matter experts do. That's just one of the Mr. Castor TV. So Jason Martin flies all over the world with law enforcement, putting up a video in the cloud, and you have this little thing, and we do exercises like that. So collaborate, situation awareness, dynamic analytic work environment, distributed work teams, distributed development teams. From all this stuff, collaborative space can be a component of application collaboration and services. Whatever, you don't need to care what they got on their computer or what OS they use, they all can collaborate. Which is hard when you have different police officers and different fire teams and different this. You can really do that. And again, summary is data rates agree, so the security thing was civil location. So again, bring collaboration to the process. Don't force the human to get frustrated trying to collaborate, because they don't like collaborating. You know. So there's a book out called Dynamic Collaboration that raised money. Okay, this is just this is getting into the summary where I think these are the alliances I really think could grow the UAF. So somebody mentioned GMU earlier in the week. There's a GMU foundation that's taken over the global humanitarian Star Tides program that I've been a part of for a long time. And it involves off-grid ICT in the US, so that's at GMU. It's going to expand now that it's at George Mason. It was at the National Defense University and it was okay, but they didn't quite have the funding that the GMU Foundation has. The Loudoun County Gramercy Project, obviously that's hundreds of millions of dollars of companies coming in to do off-grid sustainable environmental sciences. I'm just going to be an incubator and showcase 45 minutes outside DC. I said, well, if you want to really see some off-grid environmental stuff working with robotics, you got to go to the sites that do this work. Global Partnership for Sustainable Transportation, that's up in New York. They have connections all around the world. So if you figured out innovative transportation and sustainable transportation here in the Arctic, I guarantee a GPST would bring a team to your Arctic from all around the world. Hawaii, PACOM's Unified Cause, I'm part of that, which I think will be in March. It's going to be energy, resilient, security. I love this thing, the National Guard State Partner Program, $30 billion program. It's for capacity building in foreign countries, but my view to the National Guard state partners, why can't you bring innovation to the Guard base with the university and with small businesses, create an innovation model that you can take to your sister countries? And you have this long-term exchange of collaboration and innovation between Alaska, Hawaii, and the foreign country. The Department of State FEPP program that just got started a year and a half ago, my friends have that contract. They're the Home Depot in Afghanistan. And they do forward deployed and all that, but all these businesses, they repurpose surplus military equipment to create jobs. New State Department Global Innovation Exchange, that grew out of Star Tides. So within the State Department, there's a list of all these investors and all these off-grid innovations that you can go up and look at. And if the investors say, well, I'm not gonna buy your stuff, I'm not gonna invest until I see you tested in some environment. And guess what? You're one of the harshest tested environments. If it works here, it probably works everywhere. Okay? Then the Camp Shelby Open Technology Center. That was Thad Cochran got a bunch of money for Camp Shelby. And they got a community technology grant. They do all the soft training down there. And they're connected, I think, in collaboration with Mississippi State. And Marty Rogers and I have talked about growing that collaboration. We would love to take the buoy for some kind of Army or soft thing. We could stage it there before we bring it to Alaska. I think that'd be a great idea to do. DTRA S&T contract, we're gonna talk about that in December. There's a nationwide group called InfraGuard. Every state has energy security, grid security, cyber security members. They're looking at, well, can unmanned systems help build the resiliency of my electric grid? What role could unmanned systems play? I think they can play a role. So the goal is, if you go down to this DC group, you meet people from all across the country and you talk about your environment and what you can innovate related to, because you probably have power issues here, right? So again, you can imagine that if you had this environment with Honeycomb Networks information sharing, and they with the buoy we work with, and collaborative space, and you could have so much more business coming in, and education and training from a much broader spectrum of people who are trying to work with multiple platforms. I think it's all about creating the environment, and then once that environment is there, I think, you know, it's like build it and they will come. I do believe that works. I've seen it work twice in Virginia. I mean, it came like you wouldn't believe. So you get a lot of different abilities to do things. I'm not gonna read them all, but because will these be on the?
If you're allowing them to be posted, you can post them.
Yeah, so we'll post this, and you can see all these kinds of things. All right, and then I just want to talk a little bit, very briefly. I know JC knows about this. This is something that's been deployed around the world. So if you get an RMAC capability from NavAir, it's a government-sponsored maritime domain awareness program. I don't think it costs much, but all of a sudden then you're connected to all the RMACs around the world that are permanently supported. So if you evolve RMAC, that is huge. You could bring that up to the Arctic. Again, I think if we're gonna do test range innovation, you have Honeycomb Networks, global information sharing standards and capabilities, relentless thickness cabbage relay, post-before process, message, data, and video. It's this real-time, going to this real-time capability. Forward trace, that SOHIP architecture is also something that I think we can talk about. David Byler, he's got a contract with S&T DHS. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about what he can do. Collaborative space, DVA consortium I work, I'm a member of. I think environmental science and stuff, they would love to look about smart communities in Alaska. Again, RMAC and US Academy. Again, the one thing I didn't talk, how many of you know Dr. Jim Blanchard? Anybody know Jim Blanchard? He runs an academy 20 minutes from my house. He can do multi-platform human and machine team observation. That's the first person that ever said those words to me. And I was like, really? You can observe human and machine team. So that is something that from an education perspective, he has kits. So again, that's what we do. But thank you much.
I'm up?
Yeah.
Get black on.
Yeah.
I got it short. How much time we have? I'll go quick.
Morning, everyone. I'm Steve Wachowski, and I was asked to talk a little bit about my experience in Hatter operations, and I'm going to try to tie it a little bit into the Arctic with myself. You have to forgive me, I was about 2 or 3 glasses deep in a good bottle of scotch that one of my friends gave me to celebrate. I just recently wrapped up Senator Lisa Murkowski's campaign. I was her campaign manager, and I proud to say we actually gave some business to Aquilo, which is a local firm here, to help us cut video for a campaign commercial from the Alaska Pipeline. So I was able to feed back to the industry here. So I'm also a major in the Air Force Reserve in an office called the ISR Innovations Office at the Pentagon. And we had some quick reaction capability where we use both manned and unmanned ISR video to help affect disaster response situations. So I'm going to talk real quick about what I learned in the 2007 California federal disaster for the fires, talk a little bit about my experience in Haiti, and then talk a little bit about what we did in the Arctic last year. Just real quick brief, if anyone recalls, in 2007, California had a pretty serious fire season, and President Bush had declared a federal disaster. We were dispatched out there to help bridge the gap between defense assets supporting civilian first responders. Just a quick picture of how we were looking in the fires. Quick summary of what defense support civil authorities is. there. Real quick story about FEMA. We checked in with FEMA office in Riverside there, and this is before they got their collaboration suites there. It was a god-awful nightmare. So really what we did is look at a map, look for red dots, and we decided to go to the red dots. We deployed it as a team with something called a ROVR, or Remote Operated Video Enhanced Receiver, hot loaded with fresh satellite imagery that we downloaded before we deployed to the disaster. That's an important point I'm going to make. And then had our own ability to get comms independently from anyone else, and then receive video downlinks from both manned and unmanned assets. Here's just an example of how we were set up. We had 2 vehicles and were fully self-contained. We are also co-deployed with California National Guard assets. And in these fires, here's what we did. So the civilian cell bands were pretty squelched. Didn't have a lot of bandwidth. We brought our own DGAN with us, and we used full motion video to map fire lines and deliver them direct to fire response cells. So we kind of cut out the middleman, coordinating back with FEMA, because FEMA at that time did not have a collaboration suite nor a common operational picture. So we had to go to what I would best describe as the battalion level incident command and provide them with direct situational awareness of where fire lines were. Quick story about the only unmanned aircraft that flew in 2007 were one Predator mission, which was done without a COA legally. I'm sure Jay will appreciate that. And then also Navy SEALs at Pendleton, or north of Pendleton, flew Ravens, again without a COA illegally. We were able to downlink into those. We also primarily were downlinked into P3s that were providing full motion video and overwatch overnight. So what we were doing is during the night, we would stream video and draw fire lines, and during the day, the helicopters and the fire teams would come in and get hot spots. We were using IR video to find hot spots. And you're going to see some more pictures here of some of the disasters. It's me as a young lieutenant. I'm just going to click through some of these here real quick. Yeah, there's the fire line track, and that's actually one of the aircraft that responded, and then an example of the fire line that we were doing, tracked. And then some other overlays that we created. So before I talk to Haiti, I'll just talk real brief. California, fire obviously does not impact comms infrastructure. Weather is an important factor to know for both aviation and for how fire spreads. There's the old adage that your plan never survives first fire. That was kind of true here. It was, again, it was a post-Katrina FEMA that was still learning how to play well with everyone from a first responder all the way up to big DoD assets. Haiti's an important case study because it mirrors a lot of what we see in Alaska here. The Haiti earthquake severed all the fiber optics comms there. It was such it squelched out any and all SATCOM. All the pipes that were directed towards Haiti for the first 72 hours were completely squelched out. And you're on an island, and in Alaska, and then specifically in the Arctic, you're devoid of any major road infrastructure, any major airports. And in an earthquake, it can actually impact any of the earth. And the difference with Haiti was that they could actually they had a deep water port. We don't have any deep water ports in the Arctic. I'm gonna kind of bridge that after I just talk about Haiti briefly. Kind of our best lesson learned for responding in Haiti is that the best bandwidth you can have is hard drives in a backpack. So before we deployed on day 2 of Operation Unified Response, we went down to a terrestrial satellite imagery downlink and got everything we could loaded onto hard drives, and then buggied over to Fort Bragg to fly into Port-au-Prince Airport, which had just been opened by Air Force Special Operations Command. So there's a timeline. happy to tell you guys about this over a beer. There's one of our shots we took of Port-au-Prince. What our tasking was from Southern Command J2 was they wanted infrastructure assessments using full motion video for infrastructure assessments. And then it morphed from that into keep an eye on the refugee camps as people started getting worked up and more desperate as the situation kind of grew worse. There's some pictures of us loading our gear, arrived at Port-au-Prince. So the collaboration tools discussed prior are real awesome. When we got to the American Embassy in Port-au-Prince, again, fiber optics had been severed. Their SATCOM was minimal at best. Maybe had like 500K down up. So they weren't getting any satellite imagery. That was the de facto Joint Task Force headquarters they stood up in the embassy. The ambassador didn't have any sort of situational awareness tools outside of what they saw on TV from satellite TV of CNN streaming satellite imagery. We actually had no ability to create actionable, until we got there, they had no ability to create actionable taskings for the DoD responders that were in the country. So moral of the story is, and my commander coined there, kind of coined this, is without comms, you're just camping. So we immediately went to the roof. This is actually the roof of the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince, and set up a full motion video downlink. Again, we had BGN SATCOM capability with us, but it was completely useless. So we dropped from the roof and drilled a hole into the outside of the embassy to run our own comms pipes via a standalone system to beam video down there from manned assets we had. We had a couple of UAVs. The Shadows were actually grounded. The 82nd Airborne brought in their Shadow UAVs, which were grounded for the first 2 weeks. Was primarily manned assets, just because it was a god-awful nightmare coordinating the air staff there. So we primarily, again, had manned assets that we were streaming video, and there is the first handshake we had from Port-au-Prince, and a rundown of the assets we had available. And that is just some. One good thing we did was we brought all unclassed systems with us, so we were able to go to the UN headquarters and train up people and give them kits. So the rover kit you see here, we brought 4 extras and were able to set them up at the UN, get them trained up to actually use. So I guess moral of the story, it's one thing to go fly and collect data, but it means nothing if you're a first responder and you don't get data to you that's actionable. So we were able to come with a fully operational setup for our first responders. So they had the ability to view a map with satellite imagery that was 2 to 3 days old, overlay video onto that, and then draw taskings. And so primarily what we were doing is trying to check all the bridges and culverts in the country to make sure they were